everybody, Mannix here. It is time for a review on a gun that is very, very renowned. For good or for bad, call it famous, call it infamous, the Taurus Judge. This variant happens to be the Public Defender Poly. It's currently the lightest, smallest version of the Judge that Taurus makes. It is a 5-round revolver, which accepts both the 45 Long Colt and 410 gauge shotgun shells. It does have a rifled barrel. Taurus also makes the Public Defender, which looks very similar to this. It's basically the same size, but it's a little bit heavier because we do not have a polymer frame. We have a metal frame, and the overall shape of it aesthetically is a little bit different, a little bit more expensive on that guy, a little bit more heavy, but it's technically going to be a little bit more durable because it's metal rather than polymer. But I like polymer. No problems with it. It's not as strong as metal, no. But even for a handgun like this, it certainly gets the job done. So let's just get some specifications out of the way before we start discussing some things about this guy. 2.5-inch barrel length. Its overall length is 7.65 inches. Its overall height is 4.8 inches. And its overall width is 1.5 inches. Weighs 27 ounces unloaded. And it does have a polymer frame finish here, although the frame material is alloy steel, as well as the cylinder, alloy steel, which has a matte black oxide finish. The barrel material is stainless steel, also with a matte finish. So first, let's just step back and talk about the Judges and the 410 handguns in general. Not just this Public Defender Poly variant, but all of the Judges. All handguns that currently can fire the 410s. Why would you go with a 410 handgun? Personally, I see it the same way you would compare a shotgun to a rifle. Rifles are all about sheer penetration and damage out of the single projectile. They're all about range. Accuracy. Shotguns, on the other hand, will outperform rifles at closer ranges. The sheer number of projectiles and power you get out of the gun. The fact that you don't even have to aim as well. The fact that you can hit multiple targets in one shot. The fact that you're just slinging a lot more projectiles, more lead with single shots. Neither gun is better than the other. They're just different. They're different tools for different jobs. There's a lot of great rifles out there, but personally, I would pick a shotgun over a rifle if we were talking about home defense. However, there's many other tasks where a rifle is going to do a hell of a lot better than any shotgun. It's just up to what you need to do with it. That's how I see the Judge when it comes to other handguns, particularly other revolvers. Why would you pick this over a .357 revolver? Simply the fact that you can fire multiple projectiles at once. It does not mean it's better than a revolver that can only shoot one projectile at a time. It just has its own place. It has advantages. Now, the main argument a lot of people have against these guns, a lot of people think they're memes or jokes or hokey or useless, bad. 410 shot shells in general are not that powerful when they're not being fired out of an actual full-length shotgun meant to fire 410s. 410s do pretty well out of full-length shotguns. Just the sheer amount of length you have really just throws those things at very, very fast velocities. No, they're not going to be as powerful as 12 gauges, but if you want the lower recoil, something a little bit quieter, something a little bit more manageable, more controllable, hell yeah, 410 shotguns do very well. Now, when you step a 410 down to a handgun, you lose a lot of velocity. We no longer have, say, an 18.5-inch barrel. We now have a 2.5-inch barrel. So if you get any old generic 410 round, let's just say some random buckshot you can pick up at Walmart, 410 birdshot of any kind, random slugs, generally speaking, those will not do very well. They may or may not still get the job done more or less. I'm not saying they're terrible. I'm not saying they're useless. But they're generally not going to be optimal for self-defense. However, there are specific rounds made by companies meant for 410 handguns. Hornady's got their triple defense. Those do pretty well. We have a single 41 caliber hollow point slug, and then we have two 35 caliber balls behind it. I forget the exact numbers, but that's about a 245 grain total payload going at 750 FPS. The PDX-1s, the 3 defense discs, and the 12 BBs, that's about a 315 grain payload going at 750 FPS. That's a lot of projectile there. It's a very, very heavy payload. The best one currently I've seen of all of the 410 handgun rounds have to be the Federal triple-aught buck. Those things are nice. If you watch ballistic videos on those, all the rounds I just mentioned there do pretty well, but those ones I'm very, very impressed with. 850 FPS. Those would be absolutely devastating. If I were to pick any 410 handgun round, those would be the ones. However, the other two I mentioned are pretty good too. It just kind of depends on what you're going for. So out of all of the other handguns out there, there's not a whole lot to choose from if you want a gun that can fire multiple projectiles at a time. Why would you want that? For starters, let's say you're in a very rural, dark area. You're out in the woods alone hiking at night, and you meet an attacker, somebody's trying to take your life. You will not have to aim as much with a gun like this with an effective 410 round. You're more likely to hit your target with this thing, especially when your adrenaline's going, maybe you can't see very well, low light if not pitch black situations. The sheer number of projectiles you're getting with each shot just makes you more likely to hit your target. Now, how well those projectiles will do, that's kind of another story, but that's the short answer. You're just more likely to hit what you're trying to hit with this thing. You don't have to aim as much, which is kind of the same reason people use shotguns for home defense instead of rifles. It doesn't mean rifles are bad for home defense. You certainly can use those too. But I think, and most people think, shotguns are just more optimized for that particular situation. Another thing you may want the 410 rounds for is if you're trying to get a group of people running at you to scatter. Let's say you got 4 or 5 guys running at you. If you just fire a bunch of these rounds, let's say they got a whole bunch of melee weapons on them and they're coming at you, a gang or something. Snap caps, by the way. And all you got is this. If you just fired in their general direction, the entire group, you got lead going that way, lead going that way, somebody getting hit in the kneecap, somebody may get hit in the shoulder over there, someone in the arm, somebody in the chest, you may get a few headshots. But if you get these cartridges, let's say the Federals, and you're throwing 4 lead balls each round, 4 times 5, you got 20 rounds you can fire in the time it takes to shoot 5 normally. Their velocity is going to be a bit lower. Yeah, they're not hollow points. They're not going to expand as well as single rounds out there will. But the sheer number of lead you're throwing out there, even if you don't necessarily kill every single one of those people, it's very likely you're going to get them to scatter and get away from you. With this one single handgun, you have the potential to defend yourself from a lot more attackers than you possibly would with a handgun, revolver specifically, that fires 357 magnums. And finally, the big thing a lot of people like these for, or at least talk about, is the whole anti-carjacking thing. These guns are very good for anti-carjacking. You got your full-size shotguns for home defense, and then a car is kind of like a scaled-down home. So because you can't really easily maneuver and manipulate a full-size shotgun in a car typically, you can step down to something like this. 410 within just a foot or 2 of range is going to be absolutely devastating. In fact, any kind of 410 buckshot, you fire that close, they cause so much damage inside when they're that close. Out of all the handguns out there, I would pick something like this for anti-carjacking purposes. Now, I don't want to say it's a gimmick or anything, but at the same time, pretty much any gun that close is going to do well for anti-carjacking. Even at 380 auto, if you're that close to someone within a foot, you can fire in a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds very quickly out of a semi-auto. But that being said, if you don't want to fire 4 or 5 times, you want to get it all done in 1 round. That's another reason to have this thing. Now, on top of self-defense, these also make very good guns for small game, venomous snakes, rabid animals. You can go with the 410 birdshot rounds. If you're carrying this out in the woods with no intentions of coming across any human whatsoever, or even big game attackers, now you have a gun that can fire a whole net of pellets that will take out anything at that size. 410 birdshots they're I don't want to say useless, but they're basically I would not ever use those in self-defense situations against other people. They're simply not powerful enough. 12 gauge birdshot already is not very good for that, but good luck with 410 birdshot. It's not going to do anything, pretty much. But what I will say, those things are certainly fun to shoot because you barely even have to aim with those things because they throw so many pellets. It's like a giant fishing net point in the general direction. It's going to hit what you're trying to hit. We got the job done a lot better than pretty much any other handgun out there in existence will for snakes and small game. Let's go over the reasons why you would want to carry this gun, possibly stopping multiple attackers at once, getting them to scatter, anti-carjacking. This is probably going to cause a lot more damage than basically any other handgun will, point blank anyway. Being able to use birdshot for small game, venomous snakes, things like that. Being able to simply hit your target easier. On top of all of those reasons, let's say you don't like 410, you don't want to use 410 whatsoever. You just think they're not powerful enough for you. This guy, Chambers, what's the round we talked about? Oh yeah, the 45 Long Colt. So you can just use this as a regular handgun with 45 Long Colt rounds. Now, how good is that round? Well, it's very, very expensive, but ballistically, it tends to perform somewhere around the same as a 45 ACP. There's debate on that. There's a lot of different kinds of 45 Long Colts out there. They're very polarizing. Some are a lot weaker. Some are almost as powerful as some 44 Magnums out there. I do not fire those out of this style handgun, but it's kind of just difficult to say how the 45 Long Colt performs because there's a lot of different kinds of them. But generally speaking, a very well-optimized 45 Long Colt jacketed hollow point performs pretty close to most jacketed hollow point 45 ACPs, which is a very tried and true round. So if all else fails, you don't want to have multiple projectiles going out. You just want this to perform like a regular handgun. It's all you got. We'll go with the 45 Long Colt. It is a very good round for what it is. So this gun is a true jack of all trades. We have a lot of different things we can do with it. I just think it's cool. I like the idea of a hand shotgun. Gimmick? No. I do think it absolutely is useful, and it has a lot of advantages over a lot of other revolvers out there. It's not better. I wouldn't necessarily pick this over a 357 Magnum or even a 44 Magnum. Again, going back to our whole rifle versus shotgun analogy, it's not necessarily better or worse than other single projectile revolvers. It just has different uses. It will excel at some things and perform not quite as good at others. I am a huge fan of the Judges. I think they're really cool. I do think they're very useful. They certainly have their place. These guys retail at $509.99, but in the aftermarket, you can get these for around $400. So they're affordable handguns too. Not just this one in particular, but the Judges in general are very affordable handguns, like most Tauruses are. Now, why would you pick the Public Defender Poly, this version we've been looking at this whole time? It's just the lightest and the smallest of all of the Judges currently. From all the reasons I just explained, if you wanted to carry this style handgun for any one of those reasons, that's why you're going with something like this versus a more conventional style revolver. This one I would recommend because it's the lightest and the smallest. It's kind of like a snub nose. The double action does take some getting used to. It's a very heavy trigger pull because we have such a large cylinder here, but you can get used to it. It took me a while. Still kind of wearing that little scar, if you will, on my index finger from when I first got this thing. The tip of my finger just getting pinched in between there. It just takes some getting used to. It's just going to take some practice, but it's not the end of the world, and you can also fire it single action. That is what I recommend you do if you're going to fire this thing, because it's a very wide, heavy cylinder. It just takes a lot of trigger pull, but it does have both options. I really like it for that. Rubber grip, I think they call this. I tend to not like rubberized grips to begin with, but it's very snubby. Pinky doesn't really have much to hold on to. The recoil is pretty bad on this thing because it's so lightweight, and the combination with such a small handle where I can't really get a full grip on. Not my favorite in the world, although the rubber grip does get the job done. It really can help me lock my hand in there. My pinky kind of wants something more. There are aftermarket grips you can get that a lot of people I know go with when they get these Public Defender Poly specifically, so you can do that. But it kind of defeats the purpose of the gun being smaller profile. I think it's a really cool looking gun. It's good looking. Typically these sell in the all black. They also have a two-toned silver and black coloration. I like that coyote brown. I like the overall shape of it. I just think it's a really cool, good looking gun. It reminds me of the Mauler from Halo. You ever seen this thing? It's like a futuristic pistol. I think it's really cool. I like the orange fiber optic. I'm a sucker for fiber optic sights. This one works very well. One thing I will say is it's cheap. You can see it's just kind of planted in there. It's not even a symmetrical shape. It's just a very cheap rod. And this one's kind of moving around now. It wasn't when I first got it, but now it's kind of shaking around there. Keep it planted in there, glue it or something. But sorry, that is a hit. I will give this gun. That's a cheap fiber optic right there. It just kind of freely floats around. Sight is adjustable down here. I think the gun overall is comfortable other than my hand wanting just a little bit more something to grip onto. No problems really firing this thing other than, again, recoil can be pretty bad because the gun's so lightweight for the style rounds you could be firing. I have an ejector rod. Very affordable, very reliable, lightweight, compact for being a 410 handgun anyway. Very versatile. There's so many things you can do with this gun, so many different kinds of rounds that it can accept. If you want a home defense handgun, something like this would be a good option to go with. Get a very good quality buckshot. Winchester PDX-1 defenders are pretty sweet too for home defense and anti-carjacking purposes, or very rural areas. It's very difficult to miss with a 410 round. I'll just leave it at that. Again, lower quality ones or just generic ones meant for actual shotguns tend to be kind of subpar out of these things. Their velocity is just a little bit too low. They scatter a little bit too much. Some of the shells flare up and they get stuck in the cylinder. But if you get a good quality one meant for 410 handguns, they perform pretty well. In fact, some perform very well. I presume that they're just going to keep getting better and better as time goes on. Right now, the market's pretty limited with what your selection is as far as good quality 410 rounds go, but they do exist. They are out there. You can cycle multiple kinds of rounds through this thing if you wanted. Very cool, affordable, jack of all trades handgun. These 410 handguns certainly have their place in the handgun world. So there you have it, the Taurus Judge Public Defender Poly. Let me know what you think of the Taurus Judge. Let me know what you think of the 410 handguns. Are there any advantages or disadvantages I missed in the video here? Do you carry one? Why? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to subscribe, hit that little bell notification if you do not want to miss weekly knife and gun gear videos of all kinds. And feel free to support me on Patreon, link in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Mannix out.